Today's conversation is based on a lesson from Charles Haanel's book, The Master Key System. We're going to speak of persistence and we're going to speak of radiance. And we're going to tie this into realizing your mental resources, infinite mental resources. Before we get into discussion on this particular topic, I want to stimulate it via a story that I learned from another book. It's called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. The premise of this book is daily incremental actions, thought processes of incremental progress each day, otherwise known as the Kaizen method of optimization, which translates over to compounding results, otherwise known as the compound effect. Those of you in the investment space understand the power of compounding interest. Well, same is to be true when it comes to the power of mind in relation to persistence, maintaining the state of mind that's one with a vision, as well as allowing the creativity, ideas, hunches, and inspirations to flow through you. Radiance. You are the conduit of divine expression. Another way of looking at it. So there's a story in there of a plant called the water hyacinth. So I want to read it to you first. The water hyacinth can typically be found floating on the surface of ponds in warm climates around the world. It is a beautiful plant with delicate six-petaled flowers that range from purplish blue to lavender to pink. The water hyacinth is one of the most productive plants on Earth, with a reproductive rate that astonishes botanists and ecologists. A single plant can produce as many as 5,000 seeds, but its preferred method for colonizing a new area is not to cast its seeds to wind and water, but instead grow by doubling itself, sending out short runner stems that become daughter plants. The first day this little water hyacinth appeared, nobody but the water even noticed it was there. Nobody even noticed it on the second day either, as it doubled, nor on the third or the fourth, as it doubled again and then once more. It was so insignificant, in fact, that for the first 2 weeks, even though it doubled in size every day, you would have to search really hard to see it at all. By day 15, it would have reproduced to cover barely 1 square foot of water, a tiny dollop of lavender pink dotting the pond's glassy green surface. On day 20, 2/3 of the way through the month, one person passing by the pond noticed a little patch of foliage floating off to the side, but mistook it for a lost bath towel or perhaps a discarded piece of wrapping paper. More than a week later, on day 29, half the pond's surface was still open water. And on day 30, just 24 hours later, the water surface had totally disappeared. The entire pond had been overtaken by a rich blanket of purple-pink water hyacinth. So the reason why I'm bringing up this story and why I reflected upon it today as a result of going through some of the quotes from this book was I realized that this is exactly how we saturate our consciousness with the vision of what we desire to see brought forth. We call this persistence from a place of affirmation, what we put our attention on. As Charles Haanel states, persist in this practice until you come to the realization of the fact that there can be no failure in the accomplishment of any proper object in life if you but understand your power and persist in your object, because the mind forces are ever ready to lend themselves to a purposeful will in the effort to crystallize thought and desire into actions, events, and conditions. When we commit to a goal, we recognize that reality changes a little bit so. We've been calling this, through our Neville Goddard conversations, the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Now, through this process, our behaviors change, events change, conditions change. A lot of times we see gradual progress. Reality is rearranging, and all we have to do is allow our mental resources to be utilized in the things that we're doing to produce the result. We call this being in flow, which, by the way, the textbook definition for flow is where challenge meets skill. And any skill that needs to be cultivated will be cultivated as it has always been done on the journey to realizing the vision. And all we do is we allow ourselves to develop that skill. This removes so much of the inner resistance, reactivity, and so forth that seems to stimulate doubts, in which a person associates with those doubts. And then as a result of associating with those doubts, they may complain about the conditions or not realize the truth of the matter, that reality is rearranging to reflect the vision, had they only persist. That's why it's important to essentially saturate our consciousness each day, a little bit more so each day, with the thought processes, the behaviors, the environments that support the vision. Say you're building a business. Every day you show up, you do your morning routine, and you do the tasks each day, knowing that you are contributing to the vision, like the water hyacinth. Might not even see the fruits of the labor, but underneath the surface, reality is changing. If you reflect back on previous successes, you will see these patterns. And what we want to do is recognize this, which is why I always recommend at the end of the day to reflect upon the day and recognize how each experience that you had was actually in contribution to your vision. As I say many times, see things as in harmony and in contribution to your vision. Because you're still going to go down the journey to the realization of the vision. However, you want to do it more from a place of flow rather than frustration. So as he states here, eliminate, therefore, any possible tendency to complain of conditions as they have been or as they are, because it rests with you to change them and make them what you would like to be. Direct your effort to a realization of the mental resources always at your command, from which all real and lasting power comes. So what we want to do is day to day show up and do the things that we know we have to do to produce the results. And we want to be lighthearted about it to the best of our ability. And if we find unnecessary reactivity, we want to really go within ourselves and identify the source of this reactivity, the interpretations, the beliefs, and change, if needed, these interpretations and beliefs. Have a conversation with someone who could share with you a different perspective. What you'll find is this information in the personal development space is pretty much the same information communicated from different perspectives. And there's a reason why. That's because all we need is one perspective shift to change something within consciousness. And then we understand. We call this a nuanced perspective. Many different ways of saying the same thing. So we find nuanced perspectives that connects with our belief system, and then we understand. Now, as we change this perspective, we also change how we relate to whatever it is that shows up. So we could say we are looking for this perspective, but what I would say is that we realize this perspective as a result of maintaining the flow. So he says, direct your effort to a realization of the mental resources. We're all connected. We're connected to all information. We're connected to all people. And if you want to get even deeper into this, eternity, which exists within us. And what we're interested in is bringing forth the ideas, hunches, and inspirations that will lead us to the end. So, the mental resources are available, always at our command. And this is where the power shows up, from the recognition of this. See, we want to incorporate an idea that maybe we might not have incorporated before. If we see ourselves as this little tiny organism here, in which you're disconnected from everything, then reality will play out those interpretations. Think of the connectivity nowadays. Somewhere throughout the years, people have shared the idea of connectivity. And some way, somehow, we brought forth the technology. Now, we've also been saying that all subconscious minds are connected. We can look at it from the perspective as the technology already exists. You think of something, or you have an idea in your mind, which involves another individual. All of a sudden, that individual contacts you, and we wonder how this happens. These are the abilities that we seem to have once in a while, but we can have it more often, because these are the mental resources that he's referring to that get called forth when somebody is in the state of mind that is one with the vision. So we don't have to go searching for these mental resources. They're available. They do their part. As he states here, whereas in the beginning each function of life and each action is the result of conscious thought, the habitual actions become automatic, and the thought that controls them passes into the realm of the subconscious. Yet it is just as intelligent as before. It is necessary that it becomes automatic or subconscious in order that the self-conscious mind may attend to other things. The new actions will, however, in their turn become habitual, then automatic, then subconscious, in order that the mind again may be freed from the detail and advance to still other activities. He says, when you realize this, you will have found a source of power which will enable you to take care of any situation in life which may develop. So we have to go back to the evolution of the water hyacinth and see ourselves one with this intelligence, similar to it. We see this water hyacinth type of expression in our day-to-day activities, in how reality works. When we see somebody who has perhaps achieved a high level of success, they'll come with a story. If you have a conversation with them, they'll tell you all the different things that they did and the different thought processes that they have identified with, and maybe a whole bunch of thought processes that they disassociated with, which brought them to the realization of their vision. However, during the journey, it was a step-by-step, day-by-day contribution. As he says here, as we reverse engineer it, actions, events, and conditions crystallize as a result of the thought and desire. So a person changes their thinking regarding the different aspects of the journey. As a result of changing their thinking in regards to different aspects of the journey, how they experience the journey to the destination changes. Now we want to go a little step further into this and recognize this as realizing your mental resources. You already had this ability within you. And all subconscious minds are connected, so we have access to infinite wisdom. We see this happen. One person had an idea. For some reason, at the same time, across the world, another person has a similar idea or the same idea. They never met each other, but they seem to be pulling their ideas from the same source. So let's go deeper into this. He says the center of energy is omnipotent because it is the point of contact with all life and all intelligence. It can therefore accomplish whatever it is directed to accomplish, and herein lies the power of the conscious mind. The subconscious can and will carry out such plans and ideas as may be suggested to it by the conscious mind. All we want to do is align our thoughts to this idea that we consciously commit to something. Some way, somehow, we're going to bring it forth. Whether it be through our logical reasoning or through ways that we might not have discovered yet. Perhaps the entrepreneur in the beginning had an idea, and there was some emerging technologies that came out that seemed to contribute to it. For example, when I was in the IT business, there was an open source software called Open Bravo. which is point of sale systems for restaurants. I had one bar/restaurant ask me to develop a point of sale system for them. So I'm thinking I'm just going to go and get some software, install it on a computer, hook up a cash register, and set it up for them. And I've never done that kind of stuff before because I was in corporate IT, doing enterprise systems, networking, and so forth. But I took it on because I said, hey, this might be something that could be an offering that I have, a point of sale system for different businesses. And it was around that time when I connected with one of my mentors who was well versed in the whole open source space. There is a lot of different software where people are developing, and it's open source. That means you could take the software, the code, and you can customize it whatever way you want, and you can even brand it and sell it. Or you could use it to solve a problem or connect it to other technology. Now I discovered this world of open source software, and I ended up finding this software called OpenBravo. So I sat with it, and I worked with a few others, and we customized it, and we sold it to a number of different retail locations. And it started to grow, and we started to connect it over to what is known as Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP. And, I lost interest in it, and I didn't want to go down that thread, but the thing about it was that software was there. It was already available. All we do is we say, somehow we're going to figure it out. When he reached out to me and he said, can you do this for me? Because I was interested in those early stages of looking for creative ways to grow my business, I said yes to it. And we figured out these things, and all these doors opened. I could share many stories, and I will in the upcoming videos, of the different opportunities that showed up directly and indirectly as a result of working with that open source software. So we can see from a technological perspective, all things are connected. And we can see it from a spiritual perspective that all subconscious minds are connected. When we integrate this idea, our mind becomes more open for the connectivity that was always there to pull together the people, the resources, the relationships to bring forth our vision. Now, tying this back into the water hyacinth story, we can see that nature has this ability to exponentially multiply if we allow ourselves to step into that possibility. And this is very much related to what he shares here, which I find to be very interesting. That's why I tied it into this subtopic here, radiance. He says, conscious thought then is a master of the sun center from which the life and energy of the entire body flows, and the quality of the thought which we entertain determines the quality of the thought which this sun will radiate. And the character of the thought which our conscious mind entertains will determine the character of the thought which this sun will radiate. And the nature of the thought which our conscious mind entertains will determine the nature of thought which this sun will radiate, and consequently will determine the nature of the experience which will result. It is evident, therefore, that all we have to do is let our light shine. The more energy we can radiate, the more rapidly shall we be enabled to transmute undesirable conditions into sources of pleasure and profit. The important question then is how to let this light shine and how to generate this energy. One of the ways that we've discovered to allow this light to shine is to observe ourselves each day and identify where we are not allowing this light to shine. Where is our restrictive, disconnected thinking? How can we make that thinking more unified? I believe two of the keys is, number one, realizing that you have access to infinite resources via your thinking. And number two is the recognition that you've done this before. Look back at previous goals, visions that you've brought forth. You might not have known the ways. For some reason, people show up, opportunities show up. And all one has to do is persist in those opportunities. And persistence, as we have been discussing, is really about directing your effort to the realization that the mental resources are always at your command. And we call this an ideal state of mind. So when a person's in an ideal state of mind, they think a certain way. If a challenge shows up, they say, you know what, some way, somehow, we're going to figure it out. And they come up with a solution. So release from overthinking. And one of the ways to release from overthinking is to really embrace that story of the water hyacinth. Recognize that every day you're making a contribution to your vision. And each step you take, each thought that you build upon, produces a return on investment in a compounding way. This is natural law, and we are no different to it. We're actually one with it. And it's our thinking that creates the separation from it. So, as a result of it, he says, the new actions will, however, in their turn become habitual, then automatic. So by maintaining a certain state of mind, what you'll notice is that challenges, if they show up, will be easier to overcome because you will find the accurate thinking that will allow you to ascend past it. You'll be able to see it from perspectives that you might not have seen before. That this perspective shift, or these perspectives, are found within, which is why I recommend watching the video I did on being your own best friend last week. I'll put a link in the description to that. So that we can further emphasize this, because you have the answers within yourself. And you'll reveal these answers. So then we can benefit then from incorporating what we have learned from the water hyacinth story, as well as this idea that we're actually radiating, allowing the ideas, removing the internal resistance as a result of certain thinking that is blocking the information from being received within to express. We call this creative flow. That's why I recommend also watching the videos I did on flow, the two of them. I'll put a link in the description to that. So in summary, realizing your mental resources. Number one, that you are one with it. You're connected to the infinite mental resources. Number two, this is a process of being persistent. And persistent really means knowing that every day you show up, you are making a contribution to your vision. And if anything shows up that seems to break your flow, then I recommend watching the video that I did on that. Is essentially the following. You can change how you relate to whatever shows up. You can accept it the way it is, and it won't break your flow. Or you could do something about it. You could change it. Just a simple thought process like this, which in order to stimulate this thought process is really about catching yourself in that moment when you are reactive to, if you are reactive to something, release from the reactivity and then find the accurate meaning or the accurate pathway. It could be one of those three things or a combination of those three things. And as you do it, you persist. So you can see it's not done from a place of force. It's done from a place of internal harmony and understanding. And as a result, you allow this radiance that he's referring to, the light to shine, which light interpreted is the ideas, hunches, inspirations, perspective shifts, and so forth. Those are what we would call the positive interpretations of the light received within. So let's conclude this with an affirmation to weave this all together. You can say, I realize that I am one with infinite mental resources. As a result, I recognize that whatever is revealed on the journey is something that is grounds for reinterpretation to bring forth a higher degree of confidence and persistence in the state of mind from a place of love, harmony, and flow as I move forward towards my vision. I realize that every day is a contribution, an investment. Everything that I do, everything that I think is playing a role of contribution to helping me realize my vision. Upon reflection, I realize that this is how it's always been. Upon realization, I notice that each day I'm able to maintain my ideal state of mind and flow. And if challenges show up, I'm able to understand them, release from the reactivity, assign the accurate meaning, and see it as opportunity that leads me in the direction to realizing my vision. This becomes easier each day. Thus, I become automatic in persistence as I allow the subconscious mind to carry out these instructions to bring forth my vision. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.